Hi, I'm Randy MacLean of WayPoint Analytics, and I have with me Steve Epner from the Startup Within. Steve and I have been having some great conversations about the things that executives and managers could be doing to make their business units a lot better, and how to raise the efficiency, which is the direct line to superior profits and superior profit rates. A lot of this, in fact all of it, comes from Steve's book, Simplify Everything. And this is a great resource for executives and managers to get some techniques, some tactics, and it's sort of a straight conversational book. It's not a deep text that will help you just think of some new things that you might be able to add to your day-to-day that will actually change the nature of the performance that you turn in for your company. So Steve, one of the most interesting things that came out of the book for me was the two questions, what you call the two questions.
Which are very important because, as we talked a little bit in an earlier video, one of the biggest problems people have is understanding what are the real problems they have to solve. Sometimes you have to start out by finding the symptoms. So the easiest way, I think, to find the symptoms, and I've got many examples in the book, is by asking two simple questions of everybody in the organization. And I mean everybody. This isn't just for the executives. This is for your line people. This is for your warehouse people. Ask them, what was the dumbest thing you did today? And what was the toughest thing? Those two questions will lead you to the symptoms of every problem, every opportunity, every inefficient process that you have in the company.
Isn't that interesting? So give us an example of that.
Okay, so for example, I had asked one person, what is the dumbest thing? And this was an example we actually talked about a little earlier, and they said, our president has to sign every check before it goes out the door. And he has become a bottleneck and is holding up processing. And we're wasting time asking, have you done the checks yet? And the answer is no. And then he goes out of town, and then all of a sudden we're sending checks late and people are complaining about the discounts we've taken. Can't we get him to stop signing checks? And it was just a dumb thing. But the problem was that this had been a way that the president had done it since his dad taught him to do that. And all it was, there was no real problem there, because we asked, how many times have you refused to sign a check? And the answer is never. So we started out with $500 as a starting point, and then we inched it up as we found out that it worked.
The $500 starting point was what?
Was the limit, that any check under $500 the controller could sign.
Oh, I see.
And it didn't have to stop on his desk. And then as he got confident that there were no problems and he didn't have to sign every check and he could spend time working on the business instead of in the business, he said, okay, I don't want to sign checks unless they're over $5,000. All of a sudden, the problem was gone. We took a dumb thing, somebody identified it, we identified why, and we were able to eliminate it.
Well, that's fabulous. And so that kind of internal intelligence, by asking that question, what's the dumbest thing?
Right.
Somebody out there recognized, gee, I came up from an organization, they don't do this, they don't have the problems that you have because of this. They did it a different way, why aren't you doing it a different way?
I'll give you an even better example. We had two ladies in a nice company making money. Every afternoon they created this report that they thought was difficult. Now they did it by hand. They probably spent about an hour every afternoon taking receipts and everything and adding up and writing things out, and they produced this report. And they said, this is a tough report. And I said, well, who uses it? And they said, we really don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? She says, every day we get it done, we put it up on the file cabinet, and it's not there the next morning. I said, uh-oh. They said, what do you mean? I said, don't worry about it, just put it up there tonight. And I stayed late that night. I wanted to find out who was using the report so we could maybe adjust it or make it easier to do.
Yeah.
Later in the evening, the cleaning crew came by and picked up the report and took it and put it in a box in the closet. I said, guys, what are you doing? They said, well, these reports used to stack up here until it was too heavy to move. So now every night we put it in the box, and once a week we throw it out. I said, you got to be kidding me. They said, no, it just makes it easier to clean. So I went looking around, and what had happened is the owner had asked for this report like 6 years ago. People did it for him. He never told them that he got tired of looking at it and didn't do what he wanted. So people did it day in, day out for years. When somebody would get promoted or leave, they teach their replacement how to do it. Nobody ever asked, why am I doing this? And finally, when I went around and said, what's the toughest thing you have to do? And I found out that this was tough. I looked into it. We called it the closet report.
Oh,
now, the president was really embarrassed. I said, don't worry, you're not the only one who's done it. But just by asking that simple question, we identified something that got us 2 man-hours every day back to do more important things.
Yeah, Bruce tells a story of going out to help a company out, and he went out to the warehouse, and the warehouse was huge. And he looked at the area here where all the product was coming in from the vendors, and there was just a sea of pallets on the floor. They were just everywhere. And you'd see a pallet, and it would be a whole skid with a single box of paper, wrapped down to the skid. And he'd say, I've never seen anything like this. What's going on? And he says, they say, well, all our vendors are required to send each product they send us on its own skid.
Oh, no.
And so he said, well, why? He says, well, I don't know. And that was what I was trained when I got here. And so he did some digging, and he found out that, that the warehouse manager had hurt his back. And he didn't want to have to lift things off the skids specifically, so it was easier for him if he just had the buying people have the vendors put everything on its own skid, and he'd never have to get off the lift truck. The kicker was he had retired 3 years earlier.
Oh, no.
And so he wasn't even getting the benefit of his own process. And one of the things that we find, especially on the customer side, is that all too often we have huge amounts of expense wrapped up in some process, some logistical process, that is for the convenience of a clerical person or somebody that really isn't a decision maker in the flow. And it costs enormous amounts of money to be able to meet the needs. Certain people, it's easier for them to have invoices come in, and if they have 3 different projects, just to get 3 different invoices with only the product from that project on the invoice. And they insist on getting the billing done that way, creating 3 times as much paperwork on both sides of the equation. And do they need it? No, a photocopier would solve the problem. Now, they could highlight the things that were, we could even make them 3 copies of the same invoice and highlight it before we send it to them. And it would save a lot of processing time on both sides. Now, but for the convenience of the 3-way match, they can staple 1 piece of paper to where they received it.
But see, now here's where I would start with my why.
Yeah.
Why do you do a 3-way match?
Right.
Okay, why not do this all electronically? Now, we don't all have quality suppliers. There's some that you need to do the match because you can't trust them to send you the right thing.
Right.
But if you receive with barcodes, and if you have a quality supplier, I would eliminate the 3-way match. There's something called ERS, Evaluated Receipt Settlement, that says, I will pay you on receipt based on what I ordered and the price you guaranteed me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to look at the electronic receiving ticket, or that you give me the advance ship notice, and I'm going to pay you from that, and we'll reconcile this once every quarter.
Right.
Eliminate it. You don't need it. 90% of the time, it adds no value.
Exactly, and that's a more intelligent way of looking at things, looking at every single thing. Do we need to do this? Is there a benefit? What is the cost? What would happen if we didn't do it? What's the downside? What risks do we have to cover? If there's a small sliver of things that could go wrong, let's cover just those, not everything. Let's not put in a blanket process across the whole board when there's only 1 or 2 things that really need the attention.
Well, let me ask, how many people do you know have departments set up just to track down every one of their shipping invoices coming in?
Yeah.
Okay, to make sure that they pay the right amount. You know what? You know about what the shipping's going to be.
Yeah.
How much are you spending to potentially save pennies a year? It's not worth it. Calculate it a little higher. Charge a little more to the customer that you're shipping to. Get rid of the extra steps. That's do work. It doesn't get you to done.
Exactly. Exactly. But it does add headcount. It does add expenses. It does add management overhead. It
Time.
Does
it slows everything down.
And it really impacts customer service negatively.
Correct.
So those are some great ideas, and I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk about this particular element of the business, because I think there's some good examples in there that may remind you of things that you see in your organization that actually don't need to be done. And that's very, very important, because if you're not doing the things that don't need to be done, you're not spending expense, you don't have expenses where they don't need to be. And that is definitely a big step on the road to being a world-class, top flight, top profit leading company in not only your industry, but in every industry. So Steve, thank you very much. It was a great discussion. Some great things to think about. I'll be taking some things away. And I've been reminded to think about the things that are in my own business that we maybe or maybe don't need to do. And we could use our resources and our personnel on things that would matter to our clients, so we could be one step closer to being more relevant, more important, and to help our clients meet their own goals, which is the purpose of our company. So thank you very much for spending time with us today. Don't forget to take a look into Steve's book or to download and read it, because there's great material in there. Steve, thank you.
Once again, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. And we'll see you in future videos.